Welcome back to another episode of Trick 10s. This is the reveal video of my latest project, the creature build. If you just want the instant gratification of seeing the finished product, then go ahead and skip to 9 minutes and 24 seconds. That's when the reveal video starts. Alright, so now that my true fans are here, I'm going to give you some insight on what goes through my mind in the final stages of a build of this caliper. Once the metalwork and everything under the deck is completed, people always think the build is pretty much finished. Well, it's not. Honestly, I'm just getting to the most critical part. Laying the turf is far from easy, and I always get nervous every time I do it. I won't be satisfied unless it's perfect. A lot of guys are using that CNC cut turf nowadays. Don't get me wrong, it's sweet, but it kind of takes the art of freehand cutting and fitting each piece. I put 7 sheets of purple marble hydroturf in this 14-foot boat. I turfed the entire interior of the boat all the way up to the gunnel caps, even inside of all the compartments. I lay the sheets and then come back and feel for the hinges. Then I slide my razor blade in the groove of all the hatches and slowly and steadily make sure I get a perfect cut. One slip of the wrist and you got major issues. It took me right around 7 hours to install. I'm really glad that Billy went with this turf color though. Not only is it the first time I've used it, but the purple marble pattern is abstract and it makes it easier to hide the seams. I've had a mental image of what this build was going to look like when it was complete in my head for months, and it's nice to make it a reality and share it with everyone else. Besides the wiring, this is my least favorite part of the build. Not only is every cut nerve-wracking, but it's extremely hard on your fingers. I forced the seams together and corners with as much pressure as possible. The turf will expand and contract in different temperatures, so it's critical to get a perfect fit. A lot of time I cut my pieces at 1/8 or 1/4 inch long and squish them together. That way if it does shrink, the seams still have pressure on them, making them almost unnoticeable. About 2 hours into the turf install, my fingers start locking up. It doesn't help that I just turfed an entire boat at my shop 2 days earlier. I try my best to strategically place the seams in the most inconspicuous places, like where part of it is hidden under a hatch or the recessed foot pedal tray. This turf is a personal watercraft color. Not only are they smaller, they're also softer, which makes it a little easier to stretch it and cut it. All in all, it took me about 5 hours to turf the entire front deck as you see it right here. Alright, now it's time to start turfing the interior hatches. I have a bunch of random drops and about a half a sheet left. I always do these last because I want to use as big of pieces as possible on the top of the deck of the boat. Luckily I didn't make any mistakes and I had big enough pieces that I could cut all my interior sheets without seaming them together. I really take pride in my builds. When you open one of the compartments, I want it to look like a finished product. I really hate it when you see a boat that looks great on top. When you open the hatches, you see the bottom of the boat or a bunch of riveted angles and raw aluminum. The goal is to build a perfect boat, inside and out. I really set a standard with my King Neptune build, and I learned a lot about framing, weight distribution, and how to finish the interior of the hatches, a lot of which is incorporated into this build. I decided to go ahead and turf the sides of the hull up to the gunnel caps, just like I did in Neptune. I think it really finishes off the top deck and gives it the look of a bass boat instead of a john boat. I'm in the zone right now, 100% focused on each and every piece of turf that's going into this boat. I probably went through a dozen double-sided razor blades. It's not that they get dull, it's that the adhesive gets caked up on the blade and it doesn't cut as smooth. It's important to keep all the edges uniform so they're nice and neat and have the appearance of a professional install. It doesn't matter how good of a builder you are, a botched turf job will ruin the entire project. I'm grateful that the turf install went extremely smooth because I'm running out of time with this project. Billy's John Boat Elite Trail starts in 2 weeks and we can't afford to have any setbacks this late in the game. Only a couple more pieces of turf left to finish up these sidewalls and I'm getting excited. As much as I don't like installing the turf, it's a reminder that I'm almost at the end of the build. Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot left before it's done, but this is a huge step towards the finish line. I think I finally got this jack plate figured out. It's always a learning experience when I build a custom jack plate. There's so many variables that go into it, like the motor, the prop, hull, transom degree, weight distribution, and the balance of speed and handling. It might take me a little while to get it tuned just right, but I'll figure it out. I tend to lean 60-40, favoring speed over handling, mainly because these are tournament john boats and they're only going to use the outboard intermittently to run from spot to spot. I installed some zigzag cleats and a base for his anchor pole on the starboard back corner cap. It's pretty typical with all the builds. That gets us into this fish finder. I really love the setup of having it mounted on the top of the side panel. Usually I would recommend a ram mount swing arm. They're cheap, simple, heavy duty, and they get the job done. But Billy had already purchased his balls out bracket, and it is definitely well constructed. From a fabrication point of view, the quality is insanely nice. Honestly, it's probably overkill for this project, especially with a price tag of over $200, but he already had it, and it looks killer on this rig. That gets us into the front of this boat. I had to put a couple of bolts through the trolling motor mounting bracket and install it permanently. Now it's time for the fun part, filling the front deck with foam and figuring out how to run all these cables and wires for the graft bridge and trolling motor. It's easy to hook them up. The hard part is hiding all the wires and making it look professional. But that's what I do. I'm the tin can killer, and this is Trick 10s. There's not much left to do now. I just gotta test everything and put a bunch of stickers and decals on. I feel like I've done a lot of talking, and I've probably already said too much. I'm gonna let this music ride out. It's only a couple more minutes so you get to see the final reveal. Stick around, guys. Thanks for watching. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Trick 10s. I finally got this thing finished. This is the video we've all been waiting for, the final reveal of Billy's badass boat, aka the Creature build. This is a 2022 brand new, well-built 1448. The thing is completely decked out. Now, a lot of y'all may not like this colorway. I understand that. But what's underneath this colorway is one of the most elite decks you could get in any John boat. This 14-foot John boat is probably the best 14-foot John boat in the entire country. Maybe I'm biased, so I'm gonna give you all the full run through real quick and show you exactly what I put into this, show you every piece of it. Let's get right into it. This thing has a huge front deck on it. Right up here on the front, I've got one of my dual graph mounts. This is a 106 Garmin up here, and he's gonna end up coming back with another 93 or 106 on the face of it at a later date. This thing is sick. It's got hooked up with a live scope. It's got a brand new Minn Kota 4Trex trolling motor. This thing has a GT56 transducer on the bottom of the trolling motor, and it has a live scope transducer up here mounted on the side. It all runs up into this custom foot pedal tray, and the custom graph just sets it off. Now, all these colors were Billy's idea. He's a painter, obviously. He painted this thing. It looks sick. I can't believe how cool this paint job is. I could never do anything like this, so I am hyped that he painted that. And it just really changes the whole dynamic of the entire build. Now, right behind that, that brings us into our first hatch. We've got one large storage hatch right here. This hatch runs all the way across the floor of this boat, so it's 48 inches inside. We've got the black box for his live scope mounted in here, and then I built this bracket. He fishes with these blade jig boxes, and they fit into these little brackets right here. Said he's got 5 of them, so you can set them in here. I don't have all of them, I have one for fitting purposes, but you could drop these things in here in different locations. He'll be able to fit 5 of them right across here, and he's still got storage on this side over here. That brings us into the hatch behind that. So this is our live well. It's about a 20-gallon live well. This thing has a flow right system into it, so you can recirculate the water, pump it out the boat to fill your bag. He wanted to go with these vents in here. Now, I use these vents on a couple of my builds, and the people who have them say they work, so he wanted to put them in here. So we have the vents in there, and this is just a bracket I made. This is basically just gonna hold his cull tags on here. And we're gonna test this thing out in just a second and make sure that everything works while we're out here on the water. Right next to that, we have another hatch. Now, this is a very small hatch. Normally, I would incorporate my electrical panel right next to this, but this one is just for storage. It's very small. I mean, it's big enough for you to put your cell phone in, maybe a scale, something like that. You're not gonna put a lot in here, but the whole reason for this is so you can remove this pan with these screws right here, and the pumps that go into this live well are right underneath this. If you have an issue with one of those pumps, you need to change them out. Take those screws out, the pan comes right out, and get right to them very easily. It wraps up the entire front deck. A lot of room. There's gonna be a lot of big fish caught on this boat. So that gets us into our side panels. Now, these side panels are different. I did something a little different with this build. I like to make things symmetrical, but this one I wanted to add a rod locker into. He didn't really care if I put a rod locker in it, but there was a lot of people commenting about rod locker and me putting one in here, so we ran with it. Now, this rod locker is like 8 foot 3 inches long. It's got a big hatch up here. He painted this thing with some like purple and silver sparkly paint. It is sick. It's got a cool flake paint job to it. And I went with this purple hydroturf inside of this entire hatch right here. But this whole rod locker runs up 8 foot 3 inches. So you can fit up to 8 foot rods in there. I think you can easily fit like 7 or 8 rods if they were sleeved, maybe even more. So on the other side, now I did incorporate an electrical panel into this hatch, kind of like I did in the King Neptune build. It's got a big hatch on this side right here. Inside of here, it houses his fuse block. Now, all of these fuses across this top go to all 6 of these switches right here. This switch panel controls all the LED lights in the boat, and it controls the pumps up inside of this live well. This thing turned out very sick. Also, this pan right here where this fuse panel sits is completely removable too. Take these screws out and pull this whole thing out, get to all your wires and fish them out. On top of that, we paired it up with a side mount 93 SV. Now, this is on a balls out mount. I've never used one of these before. The thing is definitely heavy duty. It's very nice. It's pretty expensive, and I'm impressed with the way it turned out. But this thing is nice because you can swing it out of the way if you're not using it, but you can also let your backseat boater see it. That gets us into our rear deck. Now, this is the original back bench seat right here. Obviously, we gutted out all this foam. We dropped these hatches in here. All these hatches are custom built in-house. He painted all these himself. They all come equipped with the drain tubes in them. Keep all your gear completely dry. He's got 3 lithium-ion batteries inside of here. He's got 2 50 amp hours and a 100 amp hour. Now, the 2 50 amp hours are designated to only control the trolling motor. This is 24 volt. The 100 amp hour battery controls all the rest of the electronics in the boat, all the LEDs and everything else inside of this rig. He's got a lot of room in here. These batteries are small. I put them right in the center where it's a dead space. So you got room on either side, completely turfed the inside of both of these hatches. All these compartments have black lights in them. There's black light strip rails on the outside of the boat, and there's green light strip rails completely down the interior rail. Behind those, we have a big hatch. Now, this is our transom storage area. This hatch has his gas tank in it,
and a bilge pump. It's got storage on this side. It's just wide open. You can put whatever he wants to put in here. This is very similar to how I do all of the rear decks. You want to close this off. I like to bring it all the way out to the transom. And the reason I can do that is because I put this motor back on a jack plate. Now this jack plate that's on here, this thing offsets the motor 5 inches and it brings it up 5.5 inches. It gets it right into the sweet zone. We're about to go test this thing out and see what type of speeds we can get. This is a Yamaha 2-stroke 9.9. These are quick motors. They only weigh 87 pounds. The difference with these is the length of them. They're not traditional 15 inches. They're actually about 17.5 inches from where this mounts to the bottom of the cavitation plate. So you have to jack these up pretty good distance to get a good top speed out of them. So now that you guys have seen the boat, it's time to go see what this thing can do. Let's get back to work. So I took the thing out and ran it, and let me tell you, it's pretty quick. Now, it probably could come up a little bit higher, get a little bit more top end, but by myself, I was running 24.2 miles an hour, and that's pretty quick considering this is only a 9.9 horsepower outboard motor. It does have upgraded 15 reeds in it, but these things are powerful. These old Yamaha motors got a lot of power. This thing was hauling butt out there. I think it has a lot to do with the jack plate. The jack plate offsets it and brings it up out of the water. It's a custom jack plate. I always have trouble building these things and getting them fine-tuned. It's one of those things. It's either right or it's wrong. So it's got to be just right, and I think I got this thing right on the money. I don't think it's going to get any faster than that without losing a whole bunch of handling. So I'm hyped about this build. This thing turned out sick all in all. I mean, this is almost 4 months into this build. It's done. It's awesome. It's going to go fish some tournaments. All right, guys, so the last piece of the puzzle was this wrap. Now, this was completely Billy's idea. I think it is sick. It gives it a whole theme build. This is the Creature boat. The Creature from the Black Lagoon was like a 70s, early 80s TV series. This creature lived in the lake. He used to come out and kill people, kind of like a horror flick. The thing is definitely before my time. I remember a little bit of it when I was a kid, but I've never really watched any episodes of it. Billy's into it though. I dig it. I mean, the colors are sick. I could care less what the name of the thing is. The colors really set it off to me. But I really like this build, man. The wrap just turned out great. This was done by AG Wraps, and as always, they kill every wrap job I gave them. But check this thing out though, man. I mean, the green and the purple, everything just blended in here perfectly. It brought all of our colorway together. Back behind the Creature, it's got some lighter purples, which kind of matches the turf in there. the whole wrap just kind of brought the entire build together and finished this thing off perfectly. So I am completely overwhelmed with how awesome this boat turned out. One of my favorite builds by far. Definitely gave King Neptune a run for his money. This might just be the best John boat I've ever built. And if it is, I'm gonna top it next time. I appreciate you guys watching and following along with this whole entire build series. It's so much that goes into these things. It's so involved, and I'm glad this thing is done because the next build that I got for you guys is gonna be something special. Appreciate you guys watching. Hit that like, subscribe button. I'll see y'all next time. I gotta get back to work.